Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is John here, and I'm happy that you're watching this video. Today's topic is on racism. Obviously, a very sensitive topic, and initially I didn't want to talk about it, but I said let me just touch on it because it's something which is still there around the world. Almost every country in the world has a certain proportion of racism, but we always think or assume that racism is just about being black and being white, but that's not the case. So racism is not about being black, a person of color, or a white person. It's more than that. And in my case, I will want to talk from my experience in Australia, whether I have faced racism or not. But before then, will have to look at racism universally. And we know that racism exists in varying proportions in almost all countries in the world. So there's no country which can come out and say that racism in our country has been eliminated 100%. No. Racism is there, but it's in different or varying degrees, depending on the context or the perspective. So people only talk of countries with high degrees of racism, where there are instances of clear discrimination in workplace or public places like transport and public amenities. So people always talk of racism in places where it's clear, there is that clear racism. But the instances where racism is there, but indirectly, but it is still there. For example, instances where it's difficult for another community to access resources or job opportunities, but it's not on paper, but practically it's very hard for some communities, some people to access them. So the ones which always hit the headlines are the ones which are obvious, the ones which can be seen. So if I talk about Australia, because this is where I'm an immigrant, because I'm from Africa. So I would say racism is minimal in my opinion, because I've never faced any racism ever since for more than 10 years. I've never had an instance where somebody was racist to me or I felt like I was being discriminated. I've never had such an instance ever since I came here. Not even any of my family members or friends. I've never had someone indicating that they were discriminated. So based on my experience, I can say in Australia, racism is minimal. Is minimal based from my experience as an immigrant. But other people might say the contrary, which is okay. But I know the areas which have challenges in Australia basically are around the indigenous communities. That is the Aboriginal community and the Torres Strait Islanders. So that's understandable because it's historical. It's historical, and they feel like they have been discriminated all along. But the government is trying to acknowledge that and make sure there is diversity and inclusion. There are also areas like immigrants from the Muslim countries like parts of Asia and Middle East. So that part also, there's an element of discrimination due to their religion. So apart from only those two which have had, I don't think I don't think anyone can say that Australia is racist to in a big extent. No, it's really minimal because the government is really trying to eliminate that. So different countries have varying forms of racism, and this can be motivated by historical reasons, cultural reasons, religious reasons, economic and demographic reasons. So it's the racism or discrimination varies per country. It depends with the factors, the main factors which stimulates racism in that country. So what makes people feel discriminated in another country will be different with what makes other people feel discriminated in another country. So I know Australia have really tried, and one of the reasons is because of cultural diversity. So many people have been welcomed into Australia, and they come with their cultures and traditions, and they have been assimilated. So there is tolerance, say that people of different diverse backgrounds can live together in peace. There's also legal protections where Australia has laws. They passed laws which are way in 1975. There's a Discrimination Act which prohibits racism. So that's one way of Australia has tried to eliminate that. There's also public awareness and education where there are programs and policies which Australia always ensures that people are aware of their rights so that they are not discriminated against, and so that there is no racial bias or inequality in the society. There is also the focus in reconciling communities, especially the indigenous communities, by acknowledging that that there were historical injustices in the past, and thereby trying to solve that or provide mitigating ways. Although the history cannot be revisited or cannot be reversed, but at least acknowledging is one way of saying here there was a mistake, but going into the future that should be never happen. So acknowledging is also a good thing because it's a step ahead. So the other reason is multiculturalism. That's embracing multicultural society. So that's part of national identity, to say that as much as we have from different origins, nations, indigenous community, or from wherever you came from, we are one as a country. So that being acknowledging and being content with the fact that we are one society from diverse backgrounds is a big step in ensuring that there is acceptance and diversity and inclusion in the society. And this has been seen through the festivals, where people show their traditions, and everyone is fine with it. I will list a number of countries which, in terms of racial discrimination or racial equity, they are right there at the top. And not necessarily because of the skin color of people there. So people can be of the same color, same country, almost sharing same resources, but they will still be racism or discrimination because of resources, because of religion, because of culture, because of historical occurrences. So there will be many factors which contribute to that. So the idea of racism, people always think of color, is wrong. Racism is far and wide, and the context is so wide. And I have a number of countries like Iran. Although people might not might think that's not that's mostly Iranian people, so they will not expect racism to be there. But then there is discrimination through ethnic and religious minorities, whereby minorities like the Baluchi, there is Kurdish, there is the Awazi, Arab tribes are kind of discriminated. So Iran is in the list of countries. We have also a country like Belarus. Belarus also is high at the top on countries which are show most discrimination or racism to its people due to discrimination against the ethnic minorities like the Romani, Polish, and the Lithuanian communities. We have also Bahrain due to systemic discrimination against the Shia Muslim community. And then we also have Myanmar, I don't know if I pronounce well, where there is extreme discrimination of the Rohingya Muslim community. There is South Korea. That is the one which I was really surprised, because South Korea is really technologically advanced and ranks highly in terms of developed nations. So you really wonder, not expect them to be the ones at the top of racist society. That's the reason is because there is religious discrimination of Muslim communities, and there is systemic barriers which prevents immigrants and minority groups from fair access to resources and opportunities. There is also El Salvador, where the Afro-descendants and the indigenous groups are often discriminated and excluded. We also have Cambodia, where the social and economic exclusion of Vietnamese and Chinese communities is prevalent. And there is that persistent discrimination of Muslim communities. Then we have Romania. So we have Romania, where discrimination of the Roma community, that's the Indo-Aryan ethnic group. They have limited access to economic opportunities and resources like housing and education. We also have Azerbaijan, where there is discrimination of Armenians who historically have been living in Nagorno-Karabakh region within the Azerbaijan's borders. So there is discrimination there. And then finally, number 10, because this was top 10, number 10 is Israel. So some people might say Israel would likely be at the top because of the latest happenings, but here is not the top. So there is discrimination and human rights regarding Palestinians and other minority groups like the Druze, Palestinian Christians, and the Ethiopian Israelis. So the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip are one of the factors which escalated the discrimination through limited access to their own resources and the barriers to movement, that freedom of movement restriction and economic opportunities, limiting access to economic opportunities. So that's one of the reasons why Israel is in the list of countries with high racism equity, or with the worst racism high racist index. So racism is widely condemned everywhere, and everybody put it in black and white. But the practicality, the practical part of implementing that is where the problem is. So you will find every country has said, we don't have racism, we don't tolerate racism. But practically on the ground, that's not affected. For example, there are 89 states which are signatories to the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, which is also subject to change. But historical injustices like colonialism, slavery, racial bias, and segregation have often contributed to long-term discrimination and marginalization of communities. So racism is so wide, and it can happen even in a native society, or it can, for example, a case like Iran. It's within their own people. A case like Romania, El Salvador. So basically, racism is not about color. It's not about black and white. It's bigger than that. So that assumption of color is what makes us miss the point. So in my parting shot, would be my take from the fact that I've lived in a foreign country as an immigrant. So in my take, based on my experience in Australia, I would say racism is minimal in Australia. But that's my opinion. Someone else might have their own opinion, which I will gladly respect. But in my case, I've never faced an instance where I've been discriminated, or any member of my family, or the friends I know. So the assumption that sometimes people say racism is prevalent in the developed societies is not true. Not everywhere it's not everywhere where you meet racist people. But I'm not saying 100% that there's no racism. It could be there in other places where I've not visited. But based on my experience, I've never encountered that. And I would confirm, because it's not in that list of societies which with high racist equity or worst racist equity. So it's not in that list. That confirms what my experience, what I've seen while I'm in Australia. Okay, so basically my topic will be why is racism not prominent in Australia as compared to other parts of the world. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.